Local broadcast of Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the award-winning Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, Arkansas's largest major newspaper, bringing you local, national, and international news since 1819. By the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.
Hello again, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. If you have been with us over the years, you know that at the end of each year, we like to spend a half hour or so with our two United States senators. So we're pleased, as always, that this year the Honorable John Boozman, Republican of Arkansas, could be with us. Senator, thanks very much for coming in.
No, thank you, Steve, so much for having me, as always. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Well, and I should remind the audience that owing to congressional schedules, owing to holiday schedules of all sorts, that we are having to prepare this broadcast on the 18th of December. And my understanding is it won't be seen for another 10 days. So we, as always, will probably have to be a bit thematic here. But anyway, again, we thank you for your time. Senator, you, as we are preparing this program, the Congress is in another fiscal deadlock with the White House over funding, and at stake, at least from the White House standpoint, is the border wall. Is there any end to this? Regardless of how this particular spat winds down, is there any end to this in sight?
No, I think there is, Steve. And one of the things that we need to remember, sitting here now, October 1st, the start of the federal year has already come and gone. 75–80% of government has been funded. So most of the major spending bills have been done. We've got about 15% left. 20% left. And so as a result of that, we can be very proud of that. We have a situation now regarding construction of security on the border. That's something that the president has campaigned on. It's near and dear to his heart, near and dear to a lot of Republicans. And so that's really where we're at now. The good news is the rest of it, though, all of the other things, the bills that are out there that haven't been passed, they've been agreed to. It's just simply the border security piece. And so we're working hard to come to an agreement there and try and get the money that the president wants and can spend in the next year as far as securing the border.
Well, that 75 or 80% generally passes without too much difficulty. This aspect of discretionary spending is where the rubber meets the road, though. And are we going to continue to lurch in this new Congress or the foreseeable future from one CR to another?
No, I don't think so. In fact, we passed all of our bills out of the conference, the committee, with the help of Senator Shelby, Senator Leahy. They're working together very, very well. We passed Health and Human Services, Steve, which is really the one that is the big thing, a big spending bill regarding all kinds of different things. That's all been taken care of. But I really do feel like that again, if it weren't for the border security aspect of this, everything else would already be done by now. So that's good news. Well, I think both sides were, as you point out, you're tired of it. The people of Arkansas are tired of all the drama that comes about this time of the year. And both Republicans and Democrats are tired of it. So we are working very, very hard to make it such that government is funded as it should be. You can imagine, if you're head of an agency, you don't know what your budget's going to be sometimes into February or March. That's ridiculous. So we are working very hard to see if we can go forward and eliminate some of that problem.
Well, along those lines, sir, at this date, on the 18th of December, we read that the White House, or some in the administration, and some in your party in Congress are urging the president, trying to find a way to back away from his vow to shut down the government. We're crystal balling here. Will they succeed?
Yes, sir. I think they will succeed in the sense that everybody now is negotiating in good faith. And I really don't think, regardless of rhetoric and this and that, anybody wants a government shutdown. We've been through that on a couple different occasions. That's not good for anybody. It's not good for the agencies. It's not good for the public. It's not good for the federal workers. And so, we need to come to an agreement, and I believe that we'll get that done in the next few days. And by the time this airs, it'll be a story that is completed, and we'll get enough funding such that the president and the country will have adequate border security moving forward in that, and then also get the rest of government funded that happens to be associated with this particular point.
But just a few days ago, the president was tweeting that he now had secured the southern border, but he wants another $5 billion. Now, what are the taxpayers, what are the public, what's the situation as you see it? I mean, he seems to keep clouding the issue, Senator.
Yes, sir. I think it's really important to secure the southern border, and you do that for a number of different reasons. First of all, if we could devise, if we had the wisdom of Solomon and we could come up with a plan right now to make it such that we solve the crisis that we have now with the illegal immigrants here, somehow we solve that problem, you have to secure the border or you'll be right back in the same position 10 years from now with people streaming across, creating another crisis. So we have the immigration problem. We're a nation at war. We need to know who's coming and going. And then also we have a significant drug problem in Mexico. About 30% of Mexico now is ungoverned. And so, again, lots of different reasons to secure it. We have $1.6 billion that's already been agreed to somewhat. That's a lot of money. But it's not just fencing, and that's really what we're talking about is a portion of fencing. It's all the apparatus, the sensory apparatus that goes into that. And then most importantly is the roads, so that if you know somebody is going across the border, you can actually get there. And so the road construction that it takes along the border to respond to whatever the situation is. So it's all of those things combined.
Well, he continues to call, periodically anyway, he continues to call it his big, beautiful wall. Will he ever get it, particularly now that the House, or come January, the House will be in Democratic hands?
No, I think so, because there are a significant number of Democrats that want to secure the border. And I think part of the problem is the terminology. We're not talking about a concrete wall across the border. All of that is past. We're talking about really a stalwart fencing apparatus, the border security, and I have been on the border several times talking to the people that are in charge down there. They want a situation where they can see through whatever it is so they'll know what's on the other side for their own safety. So we're talking about a very tough fence. And then along with that, a road apparatus, sensory apparatuses to pick up movement, all of the technology that we're blessed with today.
Well, we have a farm bill. We got that done.
Yes, sir.
You got that done. But so there's some finality there. But Senator, that still leaves a lot of farmers in the farm bill notwithstanding. It's some certainty there. But they're still having a very bad year, and a number of farm sources say that not all, but quite a bit of it is owing to this tariff war with China. Can you offer them a lifeline, other than the emergency aid that Mr. Trump has already provided?
Well, the good news is that we've reached out. We're working with our European allies. The trade negotiations there are working along favorably. That's good news. Canada, Mexico, we've settled on an agreement there. We have to get it approved now. But my understanding in visiting with all the parties involved, in fact, I just got through with a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce concerning this, is that is a good agreement, good for Mexico, good for Canada, good for the United States. The farm economy, though, this has exacerbated it, okay? But this has been coming on for several years. When we did the last Farm Bureau, the last Farm Bill, farmers were making 50% more than what they're making now. So bankruptcies are up 38%, and the list just goes on and on. Commodity prices are very, very low. So what we need to do is we need to settle this trade dispute. We need to be looking for new markets so we can sell those products. We've got the safest, cheapest food supply of any nation on earth. We can be very proud of that, but it's something that we have to work at very hard. And also, Steve, as somebody from Arkansas, nobody knows Arkansas any better than you. This is 25% of our economy in Arkansas. It is in most of the states. But you get into rural Arkansas, which is most of Arkansas, it's probably 85 or 90% of the economy. So it's very, very important.
Well, they're looking for a way out of this trade and tariff war, sir. When is it going to end? I've seen some estimates where we had a bad weather season, and they've got a lot of bad beans, or they're having to accept a lot of it, and they've got some more storage costs are going up. But they say that this tariff war with China, our biggest bean customer, is responsible for as much as a third of their losses. What's the way forward?
Well, the way forward is to deal with China, which we're doing, and the Chinese are starting to make some concessions. China needs to be dealt with. They lie, they cheat, they manipulate, they steal our stuff. And so as a result, this has been going on for a long time, but it does need to be dealt with. So far, the farmers have been patient. They actually know that this is important for the future so that we can actually strike a fair deal that's good for the Chinese, good for the American worker. And that's really what this is all about. But I do think in the last few weeks, we've had some progress. This is hurting the American farmer, but it's also hurting the Chinese economy a great deal. We need to be careful because we don't want this spilling over and having a worldwide, repercussion. But it's definitely hurting the Chinese, and as a result of that, they are willing to come back and say, hey, we're going to clean up our business practices. We're going to not do some of the things that we've been doing in the past that do hurt the American worker.
Well, vis-a-vis the Chinese, there are any number of reports, serious reports, that indicate their economy is in worsening condition. Their debt is awesome. And this could have you talk about spillover, that there is real concern that this could in fact spill over globally to an extent that it hasn't so far. By the way, as you know, they already own a lot of our debt.
Right.
And we may have to ask them to buy more.
Right. And as you point out, these are all reasons that we need to get it done. But the good news is I believe the Chinese are understanding that also. They have such a large population, they need a 6 or 7% increase in growth just to keep up. They have to produce 20 some odd million jobs a year just to sustain their workforce with the young people, coming into the system. So they're under a lot of pressure too. We're under pressure. But the good news is we are talking, and I think at the end of the day, just like with the reworking of the NAFTA, working with our European allies, that we'll have an agreement that will be good for both countries.
Senator, we have, speaking of inflationary pressures, the Fed, the best indications we have on this date is that the Federal Reserve will add another quarter point to interest rates by the time this goes on the air. Obviously concerned about inflation, protecting the currency, but that also suggests that a slowdown may be imminent, and indeed there are all sorts of concerns being aired about a potential recession. Nobody likes to use the R word, but I just did. Sure. What do you see?
Well, I'm concerned about the Fed raising the rates in the sense that our economy now is actually doing quite well. I'm out and about the state as much as anybody. We do have good consumer confidence right now. Our business people are benefiting from the tax cuts. That has been a very positive thing in that regard. But there is, because of the trade situation, this and that, I would be careful about raising the rate. Right now, unemployment's very low. We're actually seeing some wage increase, which we haven't seen in many, many years, and it's been a huge problem. So I don't think we're seeing a lot of inflationary sign right now. So I I think I would err on the side of actually being a little bit careful about pushing the rates up too fast. At some point, you have to do that, but right now, I think I would operate with some caution.
Well, it is said to infuriate the president, even the last one or two rate increases, but the Fed marches to a different drummer, assuming that it goes ahead and we have another click up in interest rates. What does that portend in your estimation for the fiscal year that we're already in?
Well, I think you have to be a little bit concerned. Housing is another thing that's such a huge part of our economy, and as those rates tick up, and that transfers directly to that, then again you can have some problems. So the economy is doing well right now. I think we need to do all that we can to protect that. As I go around the state, we can talk about Iran, we can talk about North Korea, we can talk about all of our domestic problems. But if you don't have a job, if you're not able to support your family, everything else is pretty unimportant. So the economy is number one: jobs, 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 protecting jobs, and then again getting wages up where people can make a living wage is so very important.
Well, speaking of things going up, where the deficit, I think, is you and all your colleagues in the Arkansas delegation supported the tax bill. And there was one of the arguments for that bill by its advocates was that it would stimulate growth, basically a supply side approach, and would generate enough growth that it would offset. It hasn't so far. In fact, the deficit's up, what I think in the last fiscal year, something like $800 billion. Am I close? I think it's $800 billion.
No, you're
well.
You're exactly right.
All right. Do you have any regrets now about that?
No, not at all, because it has stimulated the economy. We had 3.5% growth last quarter. We were told in the past, over the last 8 years during the Obama administration, that 2% was the new norm. So we can grow the economy, and that's so very important. The actual tax coming into the government is increased significantly. Those are all good things. We have to control the spending. One of the problems that we've got with an aging workforce is that our social programs, the programs that we're going to protect and make sure that they're, protected in every way for those that are retired, about to retire, or whatever. But those programs, Medicaid, Medicare, programs like that, a vast majority, 70% of our economy right now, or not our economy, 70% of federal expenses right now are on autopilot. They don't have anything to do with what Congress does. And so at some point, the American public, the president, Democrats and Republicans are going to have to sit down and get really serious about what do we do about that, And so it is a serious problem, and it's one that has to be dealt with. It can't go on forever.
Well, as you know, sir, the big tickets, broadly speaking, are defense and entitlement programs, social programs. Mm-hmm. And if that's 70% of the budget, where are the serious cuts in spending?
Well, I think with defense, you have to ask, how much money do we spend to defend ourselves? The federal government does a lot of things. Some of it you could argue perhaps we shouldn't be doing. But one of the things that we have to invest in is defense. The state of Arkansas can't protect us from our foreign adversaries. Communities can't do that. The federal government's the only one that can do that. In regard to the other programs, when Social Security came about, for everybody that was retired, there was 40 workers. We're down to about 2.5 right now for everyone that's retired. So at some point, and an actuary can tell us, the good news is an actuary can tell us exactly what that spending is going to be as we go forward. Those that are retired, those who are about to retire, nothing needs to be done. For my children, my grandchildren in the future, we're going to have a conversation. And so you can do that in a number of different ways. You can raise the retirement rate just a little bit, like 3 months, 6 months. That makes a huge difference. I'm not advocating that we do that, but I am advocating that, again, President, Congress, working together, the American public has that conversation. You can raise the cap a little bit in regard to, where you draw the line as to what you pay in. So there's a number of things that are out there on the table. But the reality is, with an aging population, a diminishing workforce supporting that population, at some point you have to do something. And that's paying all of the funds back and this and that. It just doesn't pencil out. So it is an important problem. The trouble that you get into whenever you raise that situation, you start becoming demagogued, that you're trying to take away everybody's Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid or whatever. That's not the case at all. What we have to do is protect it. Those are programs that work very, very well. But at some point down the line, there's going to have to be made some changes. But again, most importantly, the American public are going to have to be on board with that.
Well, no demagoguery whatsoever, but if you have that conversation, does that conversation not equal cuts and or caps and or, say, means testing?
No, not necessarily. Like I say, you can raise the age a little bit. When Social Security came about, this is a typical government deal. You didn't get it till you were 65. The average age of death was 64. So, we're blessed. We're living much longer than we used to. So we might raise the age a little bit. That's been a suggestion. And again, 3 months, 6 months makes a tremendous difference. You might, like you say, raise the cap a little bit on where you quit, paying in. Those kind of things. There's all kinds of different things that are out there. Lots of suggestions. But at some point, we're going to need, as a country, to decide what we want to do about that, and then embrace it and get it fixed. Not to cut back, but to make such that we have these programs that have worked very, very well, and make sure that they are there not only for the generation now, but generations in the future.
You and I were chatting about this before we began taping the broadcast, Senator. You are about to lose. Tennessee is about to get 2 new senators because your colleague, Mr. Alexander, announced in late December that he would not seek another term. And you have Ms. Blackburn, who's going to join you in January, taking Mr. Corker's place. Mr. Alexander and Mr. Corker were regarded as more centrist than a great many others in your caucus, in your conference. If your conference is turning harder to the right in the next session, and particularly if the House can't seem to make up its mind, the Democrats, how far left they're going to go, what does this suggest for the next session of Congress?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. I really feel like that we have some potential. Many times in the past, when you have divided government, a lot gets done. And so we're going to be working hard to find some common ground. One of those things would be infrastructure. If we remember, not too long ago, we were facing the prospect of getting a highway bill together, very difficult. The 2 champions of that were Barbara Boxer and Jim Inhofe from Oklahoma. They had absolutely nothing in common, except they both believed that the federal government needs to spend on infrastructure. So they worked together and really crafted a bill where we were all able to come together. So I think that's a good situation that we can look to the future. I really do think that we'll be able to find some common ground and get some things done.
Is there much of a division left now within the Republican conference in the Senate?
Not so much, but again.
And is that necessarily a good thing?
Well, when you look at voting and patterns and things, Senator Alexander was as conservative as anybody. He's a very thoughtful guy. He's somebody that everybody in the Senate, Republicans, Democrats, from really all across the line, are going to miss, in the sense that whenever he said anything, he did it in a very thoughtful way. He did it from a standpoint of knowledge, not just talk. And those are important traits to have around here. So he's going to be missed. He was somebody that not only Congress thought a lot of, but the administration, whatever the administration was, the Obama administration or now the Trump administration, he was a guy that just did a good job. So I think it's really hard to gauge, you know, where people are at in regard to the center or whatever. You see a little bit more when you have to take care of a whole state versus a district. You see a little bit more flexibility in the sense of actually trying to get some things done.
Senator, we could go on, but we're out of time. We thank you again very much for yours.
Well, thank you so much as always for having me, and Happy New Year to all of your listeners and to you also.
Well, we'll see you in the next year. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, sir.
And of course, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Local broadcast of Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the award-winning Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, Arkansas's largest major newspaper, bringing you local, national, and international news since 1819. By the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.